Rod, for 3 quarters, I watched maybe the worst football game that I've seen in recent memory. Both teams just running 4 or 5 plays, punting, running 4 or 5 plays, punting, and missing field goals.
It's
And then the
dropping
fourth,
passes.
dropping passes.
Mm.
49ers offensive line just looking like they're on skates for a lot of this game. And then the fourth quarter happens and the entire game turns on a dime, and you actually get some really good football in the fourth quarter. So after 3 quarters, the game is tied 6-6, and in the fourth quarter alone, both teams score more points than they had in the previous 3 quarters. Now, we said this last week, which was, when you win unconvincingly, there's this like idea that, okay, as a 2-0 team, the Niners have this incredible history of, if you go 2-0, what it means for the rest of the season. Niners are 3-0 right now. I didn't look up the stat. I imagine it bodes very well for their history, but at the same time, I think most national media, I mean, even us, are going to say, okay, it's one of the worst 3-0 teams when it comes to impressiveness in wins. But at the same time, like, the way I feel is, when they get things on track, hopefully they can. When you get Ayuk back, when Brock is back, and you get your full squad, and we'll talk about Nick here in a second. These 3 wins, I think, are going to be very helpful in their playoff chase. They took advantage of, uh, winning that New Orleans game when probably no other team in the NFL they could probably beat except for New Orleans. And then this week, 2-0 teams, but Arizona is just as flawed as anybody else. As they have, you can see the talent on that team. You could see Kyler. You can see some of the things that they did. But after playing them, I'm like, they just look like normal Arizona to me. So
They were 2-0, and the teams that they beat hadn't won a game. You have
right,
to, yeah, so Carolina and the Saints. So yeah, you have to again, and that's the caution that I've been throwing out all week. Yes, they look good, and look at the numbers, and people, we're talking about they're seventh, and da 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 da. Well, I mean, there are going to be a lot of teams. Like I said this on in the middle of the week, and here we go. Look at Seattle today. Everybody's going to say at the week after playing the Saints, boy, our team looks great. We are we are taking off, but coming off the Saints win, you have to take that with a grain of salt. But that all that being said, if you look at it glass half full, like you just said, this is when they are compromised. They're doing all of this compromised. If we could stop with the damn injuries,
yeah.
I mean,
Oof.
you would think that at a certain point the tide will turn on that point, and then you get these people back, and then you set yourself up, you bank these wins, and you kind of go from there. But yeah, it was a gutsy win today.
Yeah, yeah. There were some things that that they benefited from because of Arizona's inability to essentially run out the clock, get a first down and run out the clock. The Niners benefited from that. Okay, so I kind of have this stream of consciousness of my notes, and I kind of want to go in order because I think it tells an interesting story about this game. But we have to start with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa, I think, got injured in the second quarter, and it looked like a knee injury of sorts. They showed him on the sideline, and they showed him throwing up some thumbs down signal to somebody in the stands that did not look like it was great. And after the game, he never came back in the game. After the game, the only thing that they said, as far as I could tell, is that the fear was ACL, and it's not ACL. So I don't know if that means another ligament. I don't know if that means a knee sprain. I don't know if that means he's going to be fine and playing next week. I'm sure we'll find out on Monday at some point. But that was the story after the game, which whatever their biggest fear was as it pertained to the ACL, it wasn't that. So I guess that's good news, but still I'm sure they have to do the imaging and everything and we'll figure that out. But that, you know, early in the game, I was like, wow, Bosa and Bryce Huff on third down, they're looking really solid. And then he goes out and you're like, oh my gosh, here we go again. I felt a bit of, you know, how can this continue to happen? There's got to be something going on with either luck or karma or training or whatever it is. Like it's just it's a problem, and I don't know how you stop it, but he goes down and your season is probably in jeopardy as far as how good you can actually be.
Yeah, I mean, it really impacts it, and it because the whole thing is set up for him to be there. Because let's be real, at least I don't think that Huff and Williams are nearly as effective if it's just those two. Your hope is they're able to eat and benefit from the attention that Nick gets on the other side, and it's a whole different play. Again, we saw it last year. If you can scheme against Bryce Huff, he is not nearly as effective a player as he's not going to be a guy who's going to be your primary edge rusher. He's just, he's really, I mean, he's a one trick pony. It's a good trick, but he's not, that's just not what he is. He's not that. And, it's just, again, there aren't many teams that you can take their best pass rusher off the team and expect there not to be, especially when you're talking Nick Bosa, you're talking top of the food chain. You're talking Micah Parsons. You're talking Max Crosby, Miles Garrett. That level of player, and nobody survives that. So we just have to keep our fingers crossed that is not something that's going to keep him um action for a very long time, because it changes the complexion of our team when he's not there. I was going to say notwithstanding, but even when you look at the result today, it just, again, I just don't, I don't think I think it's a pretty lukewarm take to say that this defense isn't the same without Nick Bosa.
Yeah. And so there was a moment in the early part of the game where I was like, man, the tackling looks a lot like last year. James Conner, he's kind of nifty, but he's not, um, he's not Barry Sanders in any way
Mm-mm.
as far as
Not
making
by any
people
means.
miss. And there were moments where I thought the defense kind of knew what Arizona was doing. And that is somewhat, I don't know why. Just after watching this game, obviously, is I look at the stuff that Kyler was doing, and I was like, they just must not trust him throwing the ball downfield, or they must not trust their passing game because everything was short, short, short screen. And so when you don't really have to worry about the team going downfield, even with their tight end, who made some plays, made some good plays, but
Hmm.
it's not like he was a threat outside of what they were already doing, which is short passes. And so it looked like to me that the 49ers were not afraid of them going over the top. And so when they did run the ball, you saw lots of 49er jerseys. And yet Connor was just kind of putting his shoulder down, running through some of these tackles. And I was like, oh no, here we go again, like with this missed tackling stuff. But then in the second half, I thought the tackling was part of the best part of the defense was their ability to wrap and to not let one missed tackle go into a long gain. Even the DBs were coming out. There was a nice Siegel hit. I forget who it was on where I was like, man, he doesn't make that play, and that's an extra 10 yards. So it seemed to turn at some point, and then you saw the fast defense. You saw the young guys running around the football. And I wanted to circle Dee Winters because he's kind of been someone we've had our eye on. And his ability to get to the football is really fun to watch. And, he's not everyone's gonna think back to Dre Greenlaw. You know, he's young and he's gonna make some mistakes, but the early returns on Dee Winter are excellent, I thought. And when you pair him with some of the younger defensive players that they have, you know, thinking of future and thinking of outlook, you're like, man, you know, this is a nice. These are some nice players that you can actually see playing for the team in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. What did you think of Winters and that did you see anything in Arizona's offense or their game plan or whatever that that you were like, okay, like we're reading a lot of this stuff and they're not really worried about these guys.
Well, I think to your point, I don't think it wasn't that they weren't worried about those guys. And I thought that they strive to run routes with particularly McBride to kind of get those seam routes and those corner routes. But Winter just did a good job of checking him, is what my read on it was. I do agree that there is a problem. There's a serious problem with Kyler and Harrison. They just don't seem to be on the same page at all. I mean, and when he throws him the ball, he's dropped two today. Just crazy. At one point he only had two targets, and then when he threw him two of them, he like dropped two of them in a row. So it's like, it's that's problematic when you can't count on him. And when they couldn't get Connor going, which now is like they're gonna be without him, which sucks for them.
Yeah.
I just don't ever like to see anybody, because it that I don't know what it was, but it seemed like a pretty serious injury. I mean, when it's like a two commercial break injury, that kind of lets you know that it's something serious.
Well,
They
the
left.
tackle was they wrapped him up and he was trying to twist out of it. And I don't know who the Niner DB was. I think it was a DB. When he was trying to make the tackle, he had his hand on Connor's foot. So Connor's foot is stuck on the ground while he's trying to twist out of the play. So I don't know if it's a broken ankle or a fractured ankle, but it is an ankle injury. And to say from tonight or from today that he's out for the season, it's got to be a brutal one. But that's kind of what happened is he was twisting out of the play. His leg kind of got caught. And then add to that, when they're trying to make the tackle, they had their hand on his foot. And I think his foot just got stuck in the turf and got twisted. So
Yeah,
that was
it's
rough.
tough.
But then for whatever reason, they didn't really trust Trey Benson with the same Connor reps. And then they had this rookie who they did not absolutely did not trust because he had a drop on an easy play.
Immediately he had a
Right.
drop, and it's like, it's wild. I just know from a fantasy perspective, you would have thought that Trey Benson was, that's what he was waiting on, was that
Yep.
kind of opportunity.
He had
And
the best run
today,
to the outside, but they didn't really go to him that much.
mm-mm. So yeah, that's going to be interesting moving forward for them, because they really don't seem to have a lot of playmakers beyond McBride and Harrison, and his this season has just been awful for him, quite frankly. So yeah, that's going to be interesting for them moving forward. um yeah, I think that Winners, well, number one, I think any comparison between him and Greenlaw is just, it's unfair to him at this point. But at the same time, there are things that he does that, he is already an elite pass defender. And he just, he's coming along as a run defender. I don't ever know if he's gonna be a Dre Greenlaw level run defender. I don't know if he'll ever be
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's there's a certain level of aggressiveness and physicality that brings.
They're built a little differently as well, body wise.
Absolutely. So anything speed related, he is. very good at. He's very good at diagnosing. He's very good. He's working his way towards being a good player, a really good player in his own on his own steam. I just think that actually, I think I don't want to say that. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to compare him to anybody. He's on his way to being a very good player because I just think that any comparison to Warner or Greenlaw is just unfair to any player because they are just those players are really, really, really good players. And I've always compared Dre Greenlaw to Draymond as a Warrior fan. I just think that he just brings there is a if he plays on your team, you love him. And I'm hearing the same things in Denver as well. But if you play against him, not so much. He's that kind of agitator. And I just think that's the type of thing that good teams need and have. And again, I have no indication that Winters is that type of player, but he doesn't have to be. He is, again, like I say, there's one half of the ball where he is already, right at the top of the league. There aren't many pass defending linebackers who are as good as him. And then he's coming along. He's getting better. He is still, by PFF numbers, um, a below average run defender. He misses tackles, and
He
on tape you can see he
pursues
kind of
a lot.
misses. Yeah, right. And he's out of position sometimes. He blows assignments. But if there you were uh, again, it's one of those things where mistakes because of aggression you can live with those if he runs himself out of position because those are things that you can coach and teach him, and you just as he matures, those are things that won't that he those are mistakes that he hopefully won't continue to make. um but yeah, he is coming along nicely, and um he's playing really well, and he had a good game today. And I think that you can because McBride I think McBride is a really good player, and I
Yeah.
think that his lack of production, you can accredit to in large part, I guess Solace. I'm not one to I am a believer that it's Jims and Joes over X's and O's. So you could give Salah the credit if you want that it's his scheme, but I think it's the players that you have to have the players to bring alive that scheme. And any scheme that they had against McBride today was successful because it centered around winners.
So, just a shout out to Dre Greenlaw. He has not been able to shake that thigh injury, and they just put him on IR, so he's got to miss another 4 games. Just I kind of circle it back to him busting his ACL in the Super Bowl, and then all of the things that have occurred since then. It just sucks because he's a very easy guy for us to root for because we know how much he
Yeah.
brought to the team, and you want to see guys who actually excel. You want to see them get to that next level with the paycheck, which he did, and then you know you want him to continue to succeed, and he
Yeah.
has not
It's
been
one of
able.
those things where when a guy, that's what we as fans say we want is we want guys who um will put team goals above their own, because with the injury he had last year, the smart play was to shut it down, but he didn't do that. He played knowing the risk, and you know unfortunately the worst case scenario happened. And fortunately for him, he was able to still get a good chunk of guaranteed money, and it sucks for him that he hasn't been able to get out on the field yet. But yeah, I root for all of those guys to, and I just even team players on the opposing teams. I damn sure don't want anybody to be injured. That's just, even if you talk about, well, when they play against us, you don't want them to play well. Well, I don't want anybody to get injured. I wasn't like I was out here cheering when Connor got injured, for
Yeah.
example. Winning these games are, obviously as a fan, they're important to me, but not. I don't want to win them at the cost, at somebody else's expense because they were injured. If they don't play well, that's one thing, but being injured is, something completely different.
Did the Niners keep Kyler Murray kind of in check today? Now, the passing numbers say that they did 22 of 35 for 159. The rushing numbers are there a little bit, 6 for 37. There were a couple of uh, scrambles for first downs where he did the Kyler thing where it's like, my
Oh my
gosh, how many
god.
times do we need to see this?
He is so fast. I mean, there were several times like that. Like one of the first plays of the game, they Brown blitzes, and so he has a head start, and then Kyler starts to run. He rolls out, and then it's like the road runner. He's so fast. My man was coming with a head of steam and he just ran away from him. And then there was one play where I don't know you're gonna try his name, number 91, 91 number is not gonna catch Kyler Murray. And he
Mhm.
had a nice little angle and my man just kind of ran, just outran the angle. He's a different kind of fast. And like you say, the Niners did a pretty good job of all things considered, keeping him contained. There were a couple times where, he got, the 15 yards, the play that um, you fear with a guy like that is where you guys are kind of in man and, you got it covered. And then he just, you guys get, it was one play where, um, the pass rush was pretty good, but it's the risk you take is if your ends get upfield and they get deep and they lose contain, he's out the gate and there's nobody that's gonna catch him.
Mhm.
So it's almost like you don't want to rush him hard because of that the potentiality of that. But by and large, they did a great job.
Yeah, I thought so too. And that's the way that Arizona has beat them in the past, which is they get a little bit of a lead, and on third down, Kyler scoots and picks up first downs, and it's just such a backbreaker for the defense. I saw Fred Warner was spying him there a little bit, but I thought by and large they did a good job on him, better than they have in recent memory. So we talked about the Connor injury. I thought that changed the game for Arizona. I don't know exactly why. I haven't heard the coach talk about why, you know, Benson for Connor just meant that they changed their game plan completely because they were using Connor early in the game like the 49ers used Christian. By the way, you could just call him number 91. You could just call him Sam. Like,
There you go.
yeah, he's
There you
just
go.
Sam.
It's just Sam. Yes, let's call him Sam.
And so, Benson, I thought the times that he got the ball, he looked good, but they changed the game plan because Connor was their version of CMC. So I thought that was a big part of the game for Arizona. I wanted to mention the offensive line. Now we know it is patchwork. We know they have a seventh round draft pick starting right now, who was actually injured going into the game with a groin injury, and they were going to have to start somebody else playing behind the seventh round draft pick. And this is not getting any better. I saw the back of Colton McKivitz's jersey a couple times, and I shouldn't be seeing the back of his jersey on the television screen necessarily. There was the safety that Pooney kind of held twice on the same play in almost the exact same way. It's just one of them was in the end zone very late in the game, which would have been the blunder of the game had they not won. And I thought early in the first half, like Christian had zip to run through. Like he's just running into the line of scrimmage multiple times. Yet, as the game went on, the Niners offense was on the field a little bit more. The Cardinals defense was on the field a little bit more, and I could sense that, okay, they had figured out that they had kind of worn them down just by constantly, Christian here, Christian out in the flat. Anytime they needed, something in the middle, it seemed like Pretty Ricky was getting dialed up. So their game plan effectively worked, and maybe that was the game plan, knowing that the offensive line is just kind of in shambles, and they don't have a ton of depth as it is. So anytime they lose somebody, it's bad news. But, yeah, I was really worried early because I was like, "Okay, this offensive line is not ready to play, and if you can't play the Cardinals, what's gonna happen when we play the Rammies?" And by the way, I'm still afraid of that game in 2 weeks because the Rammies can just rush 4 and get to the quarterback. They don't even need to do anything more than that. So, what did you think of the offensive line, and how kind of it seemed like they figured it out late there as the Niners were playing much better in the 4th quarter?
Well, I was, you know, I was impressed overall because the Cardinals have a their I was really concerned going into the game about our interior line, especially with Colby being, starting for the first time. But, Calais Campbell got some rushes and, DT, their other defensive tackle, got some pressures, but overall they held up pretty well. I don't have, I think they only got like one sack, and then I don't have any other pass rush stats. But by and large, that was a big concern of mine is the Cardinals pass rush, they've got guys that can make plays, and they did a pretty good job of holding up. They held up well. So even though it was patchwork, it was good. And like you say, it's just one of those things. At this point, we just have to understand, kind of like back in the day where you had, and now McKivitz, I think, is a better all around player than McClinchy, but you just knew he was going to get beat 3 or 4 times, and that's just what he knew he was going to be dominant in the run game, and he was going to get beat 2 or 3 times. And I think McKivitz is the same kind of player. Now he is a better all around player. He is, but he's not over leveraged or indexed. Like, so he's not like a great run defender. So sometimes he'll get blown up in that aspect too. But overall, he's a good player. I mean, a decent player. And he played okay because there weren't a whole bunch of free runners at Mac. And I didn't really feel like he was under siege necessarily. And Mac played a good game. He was efficient. And he threw a couple balls that, he threw the one interception,
Mhm.
and he's just going to do that. He's going to give them opportunities to catch the ball. That's just, that's part you have to bake that in to the McCorkle experience. But, when you take into account that really he only had 2 targets. Now he would go to Tonjes, and Juice, made a reception, but by and large, it was Christian McCaffrey. I don't have my. You've got it pulled up there.
Yeah, I've got
What
it
was
pulled
the
up.
target? What was the target distribution? I can't believe it had to be heavy.
15 targets for Christian and
Wow.
11 targets for Pretty Ricky, and Kendrick
And how
Bourne was
many
next with
total?
6. Um,
Yeah.
so 38 targets and
Wow. And
26 of them
26.
26 of them went to Christian and Ricky.
That's crazy. So I mean, yeah. So obviously these guys get paid too. So they know where the ball is going, and for him to still be effective and damn near he got again, I apologize for not having the stats pulled up, but he was close to 300 yards in passing. I imagine it was close to
284.
280. Yeah,
284.
there you go. So yeah, he was effective. And there were a couple times where I just had the feeling dropping back that, you know, not that he was staring down Ricky, but I just knew the ball was going to him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Cardinals knew it was going to him, and they were able to hit on those plays. So I mean that there's something to be said for that. But two things, and I hate to be the Debbie Downer. I haven't seen anything that makes me, question that um Brock is the guy. But what it has done is made me feel like, well, if Mac is able to have this success, how much better will things be when Brock is back? You know,
Mhm.
even with the dearth of targets, because I don't think I'm again another lukewarm take. Brock is just a better quarterback than,
Yeah.
than Mac Jones.
You know,
So
the other thing is, I would say now we'll see about Ayuk. They supposedly, I think I heard Matt Barrows say that he saw Ayuk running on the practice field and just looking fantastic, running
yeah, he posted a clip. Hmm.
and then having to run routes and catch balls and pivot and get hit. Like that's a different thing. But if we were to push this thing out, let's say after that Rams game, I think that's when Kittle's coming back.
Hopefully,
And then if you also get Ayuk back around that time or maybe somewhere after that, that's a nice all of a sudden just a plus for that offense because like you said, you do see Jake Tonjes get a pass play, but it's a gimmick play because the defense knows that he's not going to do anything. He's barely going to run a route. He's mostly in there to block. But they do a gimmick play and then, he's wide open. The juice play, I didn't even know if I saw him. Like I was trying to figure out like how much he was on the field today. But he kind of snuck out on the touchdown. I think even Valdez Scantling and Sky Moore both had one catch. I remember the Scantling one, but I don't remember the Sky Moore one. And then I thought, Brian Robinson, because you couldn't take McCaffrey off the field, but Brian Robinson was kind of underutilized as well. He had a great run on an outside run. But it's very clear that Shanahan and Mac Jones really only believe in two people right now, but that should change not only with Brock getting healthy because Brock will spread it around more, but with Kittle and Ayuk coming back, that will definitely change the way that this offense plays. And maybe Christian will get a little bit of a breather because I thought that dude was on the field so much. I was worried at how much that they were using him in this game.
yeah. It just I got to get over it, but I every time like today was it didn't help when you see JP go off in Minnesota. It's like, if there was ever you're in your thought process that you wanted to have a strong player behind him, it just that trade will never make any sense to me. Because he was, what again, because now it looks like what they want Brian Robinson to be, Jordan Mason is that. He is a legitimate, he's better than a legitimate running back two. He is a one running back one in this league. And,
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just it's frustrating to see him somewhere else when all it was taken was, Jed's money to have him here, and you feel a lot more comfortable with with hell with Christian off the field, or hell, him on the field with Christian um in some looks. But I guess that's water under the bridge now. But yeah, it's with the roster as it is currently constructed and the lack of depth, I mean, his usage, Christian's usage is going to be through the roof because, like you say, it there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of trust anywhere else, and kind of rightfully so. It's kind of him and Pretty Ricky at this point, and then
I
you
I
get what you
wonder
can.
I do wonder about the usage, like how teams look at usage, because you could point to Christian and say, well, no tread on his tires last year, or very little, but
Hmm.
two major injuries on the tread, which aren't great. But also the way that the NFL looks at running backs in these sort of use them up because they're going to expire anyways. Christian is very special, and I would imagine that if Christian lost a little bit of a step from the running back perspective, he could probably be utilized as a slot receiver. He's that good. But I
Hmm.
do wonder how teams look at that if they're like, yeah, we're overusing him because he's the best player on the field. And even if we were to take him off the field, it's not like that's going to matter for the longevity of his career because running backs just do not last. Like that sounds kind of grotesque to think about it that way. But I wonder if you talked to someone like Kyle or McVay or somebody, and maybe got them a whiskey or something, so they're being a
Hmm.
little truthful.
True
I
story.
wonder what they
Yeah.
would say about that, about their strategy as far as how they utilize running backs.
I know that's always the narrative during game day on Facebook is that, give Brian Robinson the ball. But it's, in a close game, I just I I just see those as wasted touches. Because there's just no way he's gonna be consistently as effective as Christian McCaffrey. He's just, and the threat of him being out on the field is so important that even if he's out there and you don't get him the ball, it makes his gravity makes everybody's else's job so much easier that I just don't see how you can um again with the lack of weapons that you have at the moment. I just don't see how you can take him off the field for any amount of time in terms of that's going to make any. Again, like I say, I think if you're going to load manage Christian McCaffrey, you do that Monday through Saturday.
Mhm.
You don't do it on Sunday. You watch his practice work. You make sure he's eating right. You make sure the flights are scheduled in such a way that they are able to rest as much as possible. You do all of those things. Anything that you can do Monday through Saturday to make his life as easy as possible so that you can go out there and give him give him the ball 30 times on Sunday
Yeah.
is how I would look at it.
Yeah, no, and I would guess that's how they look at it too. That's how Christian
Mhm.
looks at it. He's like, "This is my job. I got the money that I asked for, and this is what the job description is on this football team in a game where it's 6-6 until the fourth quarter. Like, this
And
is
if you're
where."
and if you're gonna do it, you have to do it, I think you have to do it the way the Raiders did it. I don't necessarily like to use them as an example, but Chip Kelly was talking about that they are looking at Aston Genty and using an NBA style model for load managing him, and therefore they brought in a couple of backs that they believe can share the load in terms of um taking reps when he is out of there. And again, I don't think that the 49ers went about building their running back room in that manner, because if they had, they wouldn't have had to trade for Brian Robinson, you know, at the end of August, at the end of training camp. You don't have to do that. Or again, I just, if that had been the goal from the beginning, is what we're going to do is we're going to load manage Christian, and we're going to take 7 to 8 reps. We're going to take him off the field for 10 to 15 snaps a game. I don't again, it just doesn't make any sense to me that you get rid of somebody like Jordan Mason if that's what you want to do, because it just seems like he is tailor made for that kind of work. Now, again, I understand the people dynamics of that. They saw that he is a running back one. He knows he's a running back one. His agent knows he's a running back one. Hell, Kevin O'Connell saw that he was a running back one. But I also know that the 49ers didn't trade him to be altruistic. They didn't, oh, well, we don't want to hold you back. If they will definitely hold him back or hold anybody else back if it's within their best interest to do so. I think it was just a combination of the money and them believing that the running back um position is basically interchangeable. They just believed it. I'm sure they thought they would get more out of that fifth round pick. Um, he hasn't been here for long enough that I even remember his name, Matthews, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but so that I'm sure that they weren't accounting for being this far into the season and not having him out on the field at all at this point. Obviously, you don't draft somebody with the knowledge that, you probably won't see them for the first half of the season. But that being said, they just didn't, it doesn't feel like they had a plan for managing Christian's usage.
Yeah, you're talking about, Jordan James, who
Jordan, there it is.
who
There it is.
is, the 2 Jordans were back-to-back picks for the Niners, 138 and 147, and, they're both not on the football field, but I guess I would assume that Watkins has to be close. I just how does he break through
At this point,
at this
knowing
point?
Kyle,
Yeah, especially because Kendrick Bourne looks kinda good, like, he looks exactly what you want him to look like, and they were able to finagle the 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 game the way that they did without Juwan Jennings there, so who missed the game, so it's
which
just
like what you say, when you start, what you hope is you're banking these wins, and when if you ever get, now again, it's one of those things with the injury that Jaguan has. The concern is that it's going to be something that's going to linger the entire season. So, but if we just play glass half full, that at some point you'll have a healthy Jennings and you'll have a healthy Kittle and you'll have a healthy IU, then all of a sudden you're talking about Kendrick Bourne being your fourth pass catcher,
yep.
um, or fifth pass catcher if you add Ricky Purcell in there into the mix. Then all of a sudden this dearth becomes a surplus
Mhm.
if you can just get there, and they're well on their way. Again, I am not, I haven't been blown away by any of this, but you only have to win them by 1 point. When we get to week 9, let's say, and it's 7-3, nobody's gonna look at, as a golfer, hey man, they don't look at the scorecard at the end to say, well, it's not how, but how many. And they will, if they can get off to, they're already off to a great start. They're already off to what they have, that's 2 wins in the
In the
division
division.
already, and they have no losses. That this is a hell of a start for them, even though it hasn't looked great.
Mm-mm.
But if you're a optimist, you say it hasn't looked great in part because of all the pieces that they're missing, and that is a fair way to look at it.
Mhm.
So yeah.
We already talked about Huff. I just wanted to shout out, Mykel Williams, he looks fantastic in the run game. He looks like he's got a nose for making the tackle. And there were moments in this game. I also want to shout out the defensive line. I don't know if they, like I said, there was something there where I think the 49ers were very comfortable with whatever Arizona was running. But you would even see the defensive linemen kind of jump the snap a little bit and just they're in the backfield like right away. And that happened a couple times. And you'd see Williams there, like if they needed someone to come in and actually make the physical tackle, you saw Williams around the ball. So he, as far as the pass rush and everything, we saw him combine with Bosa on that one sack last week. There wasn't anything like that today. I think they only got to Kyler once,
Mhm.
and that was by a huff, the one that we mentioned early. And the Niners only had 4 QB hits and just that one sack. Likewise, on the other end, Matt got hit 8 times and had the one sack. So, but I just wanted, everyone's talking about Williams and whether or not he's going to be the bookend that they need, and we kind of talked about this in the preseason, in that, his best quality early on in his career might be sliding into the inside when you bring in Huff on third down. And so far, what we've seen is he's making plays more like an Eric Armstead than
Right.
like a pass rushing end whose only job is to get to the quarterback.
That you wanna make that comp, I can go with you on that. The problem is, people were talking, fans were talking DeForest Buckner, and that, anybody who had watched Mykel Williams in college knew that that just wasn't an accurate comp. He's just not as athletic as that guy is. But, yeah, and people thought I was slighting him when I compared him to Cleveland Farrell. Cleveland Farrell was great versus the run for us in his season, and he's a good player. Again, he's one of those guys that I will argue to the death that the perception of him is the team's fault, not his fault. I feel the same thing. I feel the same way with Solomon Thomas. I was watching him play today. He's on Dallas at this point. He's a good player. The fact that he didn't draft himself second
Mhm.
overall.
Mhm.
If he had been drafted 15th or 16th, nobody would have a problem with the production that he's had in his career. It's just the fact that you have a certain expectation of a second overall pick. And he's not that. Cleveland Farrell didn't ask to be picked fourth and ahead of nobody but Mike Mayock thought that Cleveland Farrell was better than Dexter Lawrence, his
Mhm.
teammate at Clemson. But for some reason, leadership, as he said, and because he was a good guy, and by all accounts, he is a good citizen. You don't draft the guy fourth overall because he's a good guy. You expect, well, at least fans, that's not what fans are expecting. Aren't they don't really have to go to work with the guy. He's not in the locker room with them. They're not in the locker room. So all that they can judge on is the production on the field. And while he's great against the run, he has not lived up to the production of a fourth overall pick. But that's not his fault. So again, it troubles me when we have these expectations. We come in and we heap these expectations on these players, and then it's their fault that we're disappointed with the expectations that we put on them. He's playing really well so far, especially considering we didn't see him at all in the preseason, and he seems to be getting better every week. Um, he's giving you something on the pass rush, which I didn't think that he would. I just thought that he would from what I saw of him at Georgia, I could tell his size and his physicality that he could probably be a very good run defender, from day one, and he has been that. In anything they get from the pass rush developing him, Salah has been doing a great job of scheming these guys into looks in the pass rush. Again, he did that today with Huff. His one pass rush was, it was a blitz basically, and he does that and times it up perfectly. It's just because he's not going to be a guy that you're just going to line up out there and just have him win. That's just it's especially not against a quarterback like Kyler because he's not going to be standing back there at 7 yards waiting for Huff to hit him. He's gonna run, and Huff is not as fast as him. Just bottom line, but Salah has been doing a great job of timing his blitzes this year. Um, he didn't that the game winner against the Seahawks wasn't that, but, and, Huff just won basically on the one against the Saints. But yeah, he's been good, and I think Williams has been good, and been it hasn't been pretty any of these weeks. All 3 weeks were kinda ugly, but the fact that, they're sitting at 3-0, hey, man, I'll take it. I'll take it, you know, every time.
So the next thing I wanted to mention, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this because it's just wash, rinse, repeat. Fred being Fred, 11 tackles,
Oh my god.
just
It's so good.
third down play, one of the biggest plays of the game, bats down a Kyler Murray pass. I thought that would maybe have been the biggest defensive play, but it's not because then they got the ball back and then they had to punt because Kyler, who was the receiver that Kyler, was it Zay Jones who couldn't come
Mhm.
down with the catch? And who was the DB that was on him? Because the
That
DB
was that was stout. He made
made
an
an
excellent
excellent
play
play.
because he had the ball caught. He
Yeah.
just played, Stout just played through the ball and got, he wasn't able to hold on to it, but Kyler hit him and he caught it. It was just a great play on Stout to continue to play through to the ground. So that wasn't, it was a perfectly executed play by the Cardinals. It was just an excellent effort by Stout to continue to play through it. And yeah, and which kind of overcame that, you know, kind of stupid penalty in the end zone that was just,
Well, this is the next thing I was going to talk about, which is the way that Atlanta gets 9 points in the fourth quarter is off of 49er penalties. The safety comes
mm,
off of a Pooney hold in the end zone, and the touchdown to McBride is actually the result of Renardo Green in the end zone, where he commits pass interference on a ball thrown to the other receiver that was in front of his receiver. I mean,
that's
he thought
great.
he was beat,
Right,
and he thought
exactly. Mhm.
that's where Kyler was going with the ball. Kyler wasn't going with the ball there, so he's playing it as if he's gotta do something to stop a touchdown, and the ball didn't even go to his receiver. So
But like, but and that's fine and all. I get that, but what Sanchez hit it on the head that it wasn't okay. He got beat, but then he panicked. It wasn't, he didn't just continue playing. It was like, oh no, and it was that kind of, he wasn't even smooth with it. So I mean, he made the call super easy for the ref. He didn't even try to play it off. I mean, he just grabbed the guy, and I don't know, and it kind of bit us in the butt, but it worked out. So
and so, those moments where you don't want those things because it's really the only reason that the Cardinals scored a touchdown. That was literally their biggest play in the whole game was the Niners defensive pass interference in the end zone. that's sometimes gonna happen. You've talked about Renardo Green and his handsiness, from the beginning since the Niners drafted him. But those penalties are really the reason why the Cardinals were in the game, and it is if the Niners don't come back and win, those are gonna be the ones that
That's what
kinda
we're talking about.
get fingered at, as to the reason why they lost and what Kyle's gonna get asked about at the presser. Okay, couple of the other things before we get out of here, which is Mac Jones and Pretty Ricky. They got something going on, man.
Mhm. Yeah.
They have a rhythm. They have a chemistry. Ricky makes a great catch down the sideline, that to get the touchdown that puts them up 13-6. This was on a 3rd and 1 play where I'm assuming if they don't get it, they're going on 4th down anyways. But so that was the opportunity. Down the sideline, over the shoulder, Rick comes down with it, falling out of bounds. He may have even got dinged up on that play because he didn't get up
Yeah,
very well. But
absolutely.
gutsy call, gutsy throw, gutsy catch. There's something to that. Now, next week, Brock may be back. He could, they were talking about Brock being the backup today, and he was not. He was inactive. So he may be back, but Ricky is showing that he's got the ability and the faith of, you know, I'm assuming he's got Mac Jones's faith because Mac's just throwing everything to him. And he and Brock seem to be working towards that in the first game of the season. So this has been awesome because my fear with Ricky was the more eyeballs on him, the harder it was going to be for him to get open. And with Jennings out, and with Kendrick Bourne and Valdez Scantling and Sky Moore and Tonjes, the other guys who were available, he had, if you were trying to stop somebody, you were trying to stop Christian, you were trying to stop Ricky. Now, if Christian is out of the game, then maybe Ricky just gets blanketed like crazy. But he's shown some ability to be targeted and to still get open and to still make great catches. He made a great catch on a ball that was kind of thrown out. I thought it was like a little bit of a throwaway, but Rick still stopped on a dime and reversed his body and reached out and caught the ball. So A+ for Ricky so far this season. And this, whatever it is with him and Mac has been great. I just hope it transfers over to him and Brock.
Absolutely. And it what has been great is with Scanling and then now with Bourne, even with Juwan out, they have been able to continue to let Ricky play out of the slot, which is something we had talked about before, is because if you are forced into a situation where you haven't played outside, I just don't think that um bodes well for him and his skill set. He's got to be able to have the space to, work out of the slot. And he is great from there. And again, hopefully, as the team gets healthier and healthier, he'll be able to stay there. And the looks that he will get will continue to get better as, I think. I think he's the kind of guy who's going to get better as the talent around him gets better. Um, they won't be able to um, give him nearly as much attention as he's even getting now. Um, I'm really looking forward to see, like you say, the connection between him and Brock continue to grow and flourish.
A couple of the last things we talked about CMC being the workhorse. He was absolutely the workhorse of this game. They still have not figured out how to get him loose in the run games. 3.1 yards per carry, still has not gotten into the end zone. So that is still a work in progress. How does he look overall to you?
I think I don't know. I don't know that he doesn't look like he's got 2023 juice yet. But I don't know that it is that because the holes aren't there the way they were? Because just there's just the just objectively and statistically, the offensive line is not as good as it was 2 years ago. So there's that. You have to account for that. But maybe he is just a step slower, because he's 2 years older and coming off of a couple of major injuries. But he's still a gravitational force out there that teams have to be aware of. I think, especially in the pass game. So yeah, it's gonna be again, and I think that it'll be more and more interesting as he is not able to be the focal point the way that he is now, where everybody at this point everybody can kind of just shade whatever their responsibility is, they can also spend a little time keeping their eyes on him because, there really aren't that many weapons or things. If you're a linebacker, it's not like you got Kittle out there, having to worry about Tonjes or Farrell is not the same as having to be concerned about Kittle. Same thing with your cornerbacks, same things with your safeties. It just the lack of talented playmakers just makes the ability to shade just a little bit and cheat just a little bit towards Christian a little bit more easier, and I'm not sure what that does in terms of affecting his overall productiveness. But again, I'm just happy that they have been able to bank these wins when they have been ailing, and hopefully, as they get stronger, they will get better both on both sides of the ball. Because I mean, let's give them credit for somebody who for a fan base that poops on Kyle so much. He has done an excellent job of manufacturing opportunities and putting us in position to score, as in the same way that I think that him and Salah have been very, very complimentary to each other as play callers this season.
And, we gotta talk about the last drive. I thought it was a brilliant last drive. You have, just over 2 minutes left in the game, or no, you had a little bit less than 2 minutes in the game, and you go all the way 80 in you got it on your own 20 because the punt went in the end zone, and Sky Moore very brilliantly decided to let that one bounce, and on the other end, I thought the Cardinals, punt returner didn't do that, and even I think even the one before that, Sky Moore caught it like inside the 5. Like, I don't know what it is with these punt returners just not letting balls drop around the 5-yard line. They're actually fair catching it. And maybe the punters are just so much better at making the ball bounce backwards, and you don't want to get stuck with the ball being inside the 5. But I'm seeing a lot in this game specifically. There was a lot of catching like the ball at the 8 and calling for a fair catch. But then to go from R20 all the way down to I think they got all the way down to the Cardinals like 17 or something in a span of less than 2 minutes. There were some really nice plays, like I mentioned the gadget play to Tonjes. There was a quick screen to CMC where he broke out, and that was probably his biggest play of the game. And that was a brilliant, just under 2 minutes, Cardinals defense on their heels. Mac Jones, didn't make a mistake on this series when he had made one on the previous series. So that was some good stuff. So we'll end with this, which is Chad Ryland, the Arizona Cardinals kicker, goes 2 for 3, and Latino Heat Eddy Pineiro goes 3 for 3, kicks one at the buzzer. And we can only base this on how we felt about Jake Moody. Had Jake Moody been on this field, Jake Moody very well may have made the 35-yard field goal. But I can tell you my confidence level in Pineiro kicking versus what it would have been if Jake Moody was kicking. I was pretty confident this thing was going in, and I was excited that they got as far as they did. Whereas when Moody was kicking, I was
It didn't
worried that
matter.
they didn't go for the touchdown. And, I would have been worried that they should have gone for the touchdown knowing that Moody is shaky. So it's been fantastic so far. You could say that that was the right call after week 1, at least so far, to get out from under this guy. You gave him 3 years, or 2 years and a game, and you just can't afford to. And I wonder how much of it was them knowing the offense was going to struggle with all these guys out, and they needed to bank those points in these games, which they've been able to, at least these last two, to win some close ones. So great job. We don't really. Uh, how can you give kudos to a guy to make a 35 yarder? But the flip side would have been us, like, pausing the TV and getting something to drink and, like, going like, oh my gosh, what do I have to put on, the which hat, which thing for good luck? And you don't do that with
Mhm.
Pineiro. You just go up.
Mm-mm.
This is. I'm not saying he's Robbie Gould, but you feel so much better with him kicking than with Jake kicking.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's based on his track record. I mean, because that's all I know about him is they tell me he's got the 4th best percentage in history. So you kind of okay, that's fine. You just kind of expecting to make it. And to this point, he has been money straight down the middle. It hasn't been, outside of his first extra point, which, he's allowed to have some nerves, I guess. But he's been solid, rock solid other than that. And that's all you want, honestly, is he like these other crazy kickers that Moody probably will develop into that, is live from 63. No, that's not what you're signing up for with Pinheiro. But, you know, it seems like inside of 50, his career record says that, he's money. And so that's, if you have to, and he's been fine with the kickoff. So if you have to, it's crazy that you think that, you know, wow, he can only be good from 53, 54. I remember there was a time when that was that was a great thing to be. It's it's the advent of the where guys are routinely kicking 60+ yard field goals and making a good number of them. This is it's a whole new world out here for kickers.
Ray Wershing's career long, I just looked it up, 53 yards, which is actually pretty
Wow.
good for Ray.
That's not bad. For that time, it's just, because I know in Ray's time, those guys, they weren't going to kicking camps, when they were 8 and 9 years old. These guys, and now they kick, like literally, they are going to camps and the coaches and all of that from, 10, 12, 10, 12 years old if you've got the resources and money to do that. So it's just it's a different game. But we saw a dude hit a 70 yarder in the preseason this year. That's just bananas. That is so far away.
So good stuff, and they come away with a win, 16-15
Yeah.
at the buzzer. The perfect drive to end the game. You saw Kyler just sad on the sideline. He was just like, I know what's coming, man. This is not cool. So the Niners play Jacksonville next at home, and the Jags themselves got a big win today. So they're kind of coming in a little hot, I guess. If you're a Jags fan, maybe you're thinking, Niners don't look great, and we beat Houston, who is supposed to be a better team than ours, and so maybe they're thinking that they can come through. They are 2-1 as well. The Colts of all teams, just boat racing teams right now.
Man, it's
Um,
crazy. And they, and the Jags kind of got a preview this week of what they'll see.
Mhm.
Obviously this team isn't. as loaded on defense as the Texans are, but it's a similar scheme, and that will help them somewhat, I imagine. And for our standpoint, um, yeah, I don't think it's just thinking back on it. It's easy. We haven't played anybody as good as Brian Thomas yet, from a receiving standpoint, and
Smith and
Hunter.
Jigba's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I just don't think he's as good a player as Thomas, though. But like you said, that they did pretty well against him. So yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be another good test for us. At least we get them at home this time.
Yes. So we
Because that Jacksonville trip is no bueno this time of year.
we'll come back next weekend. I don't think we're going to be able to live stream, but the next game after that is Thursday night against the Rams, and we can come back live after that Thursday game. So those will be the
Sounds
next
good
two.
on both accounts.
And we'll be so we'll I mean, we're going to be here for all 17 games and any playoff games as well. So that is the schedule for the rest of this week. Now, my Giants have kind of faded, so Brad and I are kind of wrapping up the baseball season, and my Valkyries lost, so they're done. But our Warriors are getting ready for training camp in the next couple weeks, so that there's something going on there. But for now, it's really going to be Niners. If the Niners can continue to win ball games, they're going to be the talk of the Bay. They already almost always are the talk of the Bay, anyways, just for being football and for being the 49ers. But this is a nice change of pace from what we were dealing with last year, where everything was just kind of like frustrating and man, what could have been if X didn't happen. X is happening, and they're still able to win these very winnable games. So, well, hopefully that gives us a little bit of good luck when it comes to guys coming back, and then we can get a little bit closer to full boat there. All right, that is it from here for Rod. I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.